to be able to clean this up, go through this. When I had begun that divination website, I recall thinking, this is the last business I will ever need to start in my lifetime. This can be my retirement income finally. I had something I thought would be helpful to others and still pay the bills. I worked at developing it. I worked hard at developing it all. And I joined the top dowsing association in my country and became a member and stuff like that, because I wanted to be what I thought was legitimate and professional. I was gaining customers pretty quickly, and the services were expanding in dowsing, anything from dowsing what the name of an illness was. This was the medical intuitive dowsing. If you look up a medical intuitive, you would see what those people do. I was someone people would come to. I would be able to use the pendulum. I would be able to dowse medical books and pick up on their body where the pain was. And I could match a disease name, dowse and pick out the disease name that was bothering that body part or area of a person's body. It was really talking to the dead. Like, I was also dowsing for people if they wanted to talk to their dead relatives. I was business dowsing if anybody wanted direction on what to do for a certain point in their business. I could dowse yes, no, or words and things like that, or just basic dowsing. I had applied also to become an intuitive dowser for lost and missing persons and such things like that. I actually never stayed in the business long enough to see if I ever got accepted for that. But I did apply for that because I was interested in helping people, right? You know how it is when you have a missing, lost, or loved one and you want to locate them. Well, I was pretty sure I could locate people. And I wanted to do that with dowsing because my dowsing was picking up where, to the point where I was making my rounds in the known radionic fields by now. And, top companies were looking at my services as legitimate and my services pretty accurate. Now, this is the unclean spiritual world. And what they do is the unclean spirits groom you to look good to other people who are open to these ideas. So the radionics therapies have been introduced to me by a family member who went to Ecuador for disease healing. He saw amazing things, he said, and witnessed many people getting cured of gaping open wounds with these therapies. So he brought the technology and a book back home with him. And that is how I got introduced to this level of healing things that went to many levels and different healing breakdowns. And these types of delivery methods on the different machines, they vary. It depends what kind of machine you're using, from radionics to electromagnetics to rifes, but they all scalar, they all have their different methods of delivery. Well, these ones were not rife, the radionics, and a delivery system like that. And same with electromagnetics. But anyways, this is all new age carrots, right? That was being dangled in front of my nose. And I was so hungry for healing for my son and I, and still not knowing God's healing yet. I had jumped in fully to the alternative stuff. And this is where things start moving in a much more extreme supernatural way in 2022. So the medical intuitive dowsing was not just for business purposes. I would apply to some of my family and learn what was wrong where with a family member, what could be done to fix it. I could dowse as to what kind of doctor would need to be seen for the problem. I had a list of physicians' titles, and not names of physicians, but We're going to take a look at a nephrologist. We're going to take a look at a cardiologist, whatever. I could douse over all the names and say, this is what you need to go see. A goal of mine was still to resolve my son's medical issues and my own, and my father was heavy into wanting medical dowsing done as well for himself. Very insistent for himself all the time. Things progressed, and while I was building all this up, for me and my son, we actually were not improving medically ourselves. While I was working at this, I was still seeing if there was more that I was missing, because it was very noticeable to me that, other people are getting benefit here, or saying they were. Did I have anybody that brought me test results back and proved medically while I was into this level of stuff? No. Me and my son, I knew no, we weren't getting better. Then I am contacted online by a man from Brazil who said something like he thought my dowsing services could be very useful in something he was doing, a project he was working on, and he'd like to meet online to discuss this project. And would I be open to meeting him? At that same time frame, I was referred to an angelic psychic to go see this lady, and that she was very good for another friend who had seen her. So I booked an appointment with this psychic lady and was seeking guidance where to go next, and in anything and everything medical for my son and business-wise and everything else. I also told her about the man in Brazil wanting to meet, and what was her opinion on that. So this lady told me many things in the approximately 1.5 hour appointment I had with her. She said I had 2 spirit guides, a female, a lady with an herbal basket named Christina, a gatherer on one side, and the other spirit guide was a male, an older man, a soldier, army, tough style man on the other side. No name. With this older man, he was some kind of like a general or something. I don't know. She thought he was very stern in army style. She said my son would be much better. Within about 2 years, we would be living together somewhere else, which never happened. She told me it would be best to not involve my son in my current online business of dowsing. She said she felt my son could benefit from a visit with a shaman healer. She knew one that she highly recommended. She also said that yes, I should meet with the man in Brazil, and it could be beneficial to meet with him. I booked appointments with the shaman healer that was recommended by the psychic, and also an appointment with another radionic ring dowser in my city that was more experienced than me, and offered a several $1,000 course to learn from him, etc. I ended up not keeping that dowsing appointment at this other place in my city, and I proceeded with the shaman soul gate healer instead. Booked appointment with this man, and this man worked a lot with soul gate, shaman soul gate healer. This man specifically worked in soul gates and soul gatekeepers. So we had an appointment where my son was not present, and he didn't need to be present because this man worked in a spiritual realm, he said. So he goes in his own sort of trance state in the meeting and said he could see all 3 of my son's gates damaged. He explained there was an upper gate, middle gate, and lower gate for each human. He said the upper gate was flung open and there was no gatekeeper there. He said the middle gate was damaged and no gatekeeper, I think it was. He said the bottom gate was badly damaged and the gatekeeper was badly injured. So much that he had to summon a volunteer, a healthy gatekeeper, to stand guard there now. As the appointment progressed, he said all 3 gates had been repaired and he had a gatekeeper at all gates now, and that within 2 months everything would be well, and that he had done this for other people, another man, and that man was well within about 30 days, 40 days, something like that. I can tell you people, this was all bull crap. My son didn't improve because of this. My money went out of my bank account, out the window. for this man's ineffective services. I'm not going to say his name, but if you run into a shaman, soul gate repair man anywhere, run. Run. It's not effective. It's just a bunch of baloney. Now entering the scenario comes who I will call Brazil Man. I'll label him Brazil Man instead of using his real name. This was in the year 2022, and I had written down on my short notes that this was 2022. So because of what the psychic said previously, a new set of supernatural experiences ensue now after accepting Brazil Man's Zoom invitation and beginning working together on his project. But I have to explain what happened during working with this man in order to explain what God does later on. We scheduled via Zoom meeting online. The meeting opened. He was speaking good English. He was very relaxed, pleasant, matter of fact. Started with a hello, good to meet you type of thing. He next sort of shuffled in his chair and began explaining that Michael and his angels said it would be okay to approach you, and added something like there's some people he cannot approach, but I was one of the ones that he was told would be okay to approach. Immediately, this simple explanation caught my attention because he was talking about Archangel Michael, and I knew this was the name of an angel close to God. Even though I wasn't born again yet, I knew God had an angel named Michael. I recall thinking, wow, is this real? And I thought internally, like, what an honor or something like that. I was swept off my feet that God even really knew who I was, basically. And I was hooked, believing this man. Mostly because I had been working with supernatural spirits, dowsing, and knew that the pendulum would give answers back from spirits at that time. And so in my dowsing experiences, I had very often dowsed questions directly to God because I wanted to have a conversation with God as well and talk to God. It didn't even occur to me to talk to him through prayer at all. And I never thought there was anything wrong with this. I was absolutely clueless and just thought, well, since the pendulum was responding to what I asked, and because I asked to speak with God, well, then it must be God. And so I was off in my own private world thinking I had a talking relationship with God in this fashion, where I could ask him questions and he would answer me back. Because the dowsing world trains you that you can inquire a question on anything. I would douse and ask anything and everything. I recall asking him, like, God, were you ever married? And the response back was no. The pendulum chart had a yes-no options on it. And I recall I said, well, neither have I ever been officially married. And I would talk to him like that, like a real person, but through the pendulum, and ask many personal nature style things, like as if you would have a person in front of you. I would be sitting there having a conversation, me talking to God like that in my mind through the pendulum, and asking about the marriage, asking, why not? You can marry any human you want, and any woman would love you, basically. I think he responded with something then. I don't recall what it was. But I had asked a lot, and so I recall having these conversations with my pendulum and God. And I was not in prayer, of course, just working, as God would say, like a thief. And I say this because of John 10:1, and it says, truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber. And this is also why God said to me, you came in the back door. This I know now because I didn't enter the door into the fold of the sheep at that time. Anyways, so to me, it was not out of the realm for someone to say something like this to me, that Archangel Michael said it was okay to approach me. Because you see, I had many dowsing charts, like 50 or 60 of them. And on one of them that I used to use a lot, it was an angel chart with the top around 14 angels of the Lord's, including Michael's name on it. I recall thinking, as an extra service, people would like to know which guardian angels were theirs from God in the dowsing world. And so I would douse and tell them which ones were indicated for them through the pendulum. Another time I recall I had doused that angel chart for something, and I had asked which angels were present at that time. And one by one, it was the whole chart filled up, and it was like, wow, they're all here. I had videoed that one, but ended up deleting it when I was transitioning everything to do with that stuff out of my life. So I don't have that video anymore. So Brazil man, he explained further in ongoing meetings about a healing therapeutic program he was developing in Brazil with a group of other dowsers he had acquired already. He explained that this was a project for God, and it would affect anything and everything in regards to healing of all things to basically come in the future. There was categories of things on the project like humans, animals, plants, crystals, etc. But he was starting with humans. And basically my end of the project, seeing as I was dowsing mostly human medical conditions at the time, I was to determine by dowsing to locate all of the human emotions from a list and correlate which body part, system, or organ that the emotion resided in. So very much like an emotion code system, where these emotions could be identified exactly where the stuck emotion was, and then cleared out to help a person heal, he explained. He explained the system was originally from another system, similar, from a man in Brazil that he knew, and he was expanding it to new levels. He explained his other workers in Brazil, he could not pay them outright, but they were allowed to use his program for free to help others. And he asked me if I was interested to help out or work on the project and develop the English-based version or list of emotions, matching dowsed body systems, etc. So, was I interested in this project for God, was the question. And if so, what would I ask of him in return for the work? I paused in my mind, I mulled over what he was asking, and I thought, wow, any project for God, there is no way to justify asking for money. So I said I would work the project for free. As to the second part of his question, was there anything I'd like in return? I answered, well, not for myself, but if possible, I have a son that has been not well a long time, so that the doctors cannot help with certain things. And could you help my son at all with that? That would be awesome. His response was, I am sure I can help with that. And he had this big smile on his face. So it seemed we had an agreement then. I have since, of course, rebuked anything to do with this. Renounced and rebuked and asked forgiveness and repented for anything to do with all of these things I've talked about to date. And in my whole testimony as well. By the time you hear the rest of it, I constantly was asking God forgiveness and repenting the whole way through this whole ordeal when I came to realize these things I was doing was wrong. I'm aware of nowadays of Deliverance Ministry, but back then I had no idea what I was doing at all in this spiritual realm as far as contracts, satanic contracts or satanic agreements, being in agreement with bad things, unclean spirits. I didn't even know things like that existed. So the project and the meetings began. I spent constant time on the project to not miss anything and get every item on his list given to me. Identified and documented, charted out. I finished the complete work in under a month, I believe it was. And I was careful to be exact on the information, testing and retesting my results I was gathering and documenting down, and I finished the whole project of what he wanted me to do. During this period of months working with him, he unfolded a constant feed of information of personal things in his life that happened and other more worldly things I didn't know about, and I thought I was learning about that were of God. He was showing me things of magician's power he had learned. He also, in a short time after meeting him, revealed himself as Yeshua's son, and that he was put in charge of watching over the universe, and he was basically in training to take over things eventually. He said it was his job to watch over and be sure other things did not come in and threaten our universe from outside universes, and he was responsible for this. I recall a conversation of him asking, had I ever heard of Yeshua or Yahweh, YHWH. And I responded, no, I had not, because I had not heard those names. Didn't know what he was talking about, but I wrote down the names he was talking about, wondering, okay, what do these names mean that he's talking about? Because he seemed to place great importance on the names. And so later, I looked them up on Google, I believe, and I got into scripture and had no idea how to fit this together, what was happening, because this was very biblical stuff, and I had never read the Bible, and it was all confusing that this man was in my presence, claiming to be all of this, and doing all these things, and that it was okayed by Michael to approach me. If there ever was a prize given for the biggest sucker in the world, when I think back on all of this now, then I would have won that prize hands down, because I was a sitting duck with no discernment of God's word. So he continued on introducing me to a really wide variety of things I had not seen before, things I had not experienced before or heard of before. He talked a lot about healing people. He would do a lot of channeling. He would do a lot of being in a trance state and channel, and then not remember at all what he said afterward. I would take notes and write it down. He was interested in healing of the world, creating coal and color healing, candle and angel prayer enchantments with Archangel Michael. He wanted to protect the world and the universe, keeping bad guys away, so to speak, not just on earth, but in the heavens, basically, in the universe, in the sky, so to speak, is how he talked. Finding and clearing unforgiveness was big with him. Energy work was huge for him. Teleporting was big with him. Objects were all known to him, like spells, enchantments, objects that had something attached to them and they were buried and had to be doused to be located and cleared of spells. Charging physical or spiritual realm crystals, and Merkabah is derived from Kundalini, New Age practice of opening the heart, and things of Atlantis were very big with him. He also taught me about coals in his way. In Proverbs 25:22, it says, "For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee." But for healing, he was saying in a spiritual fashion that spiritual coals had various colors, and how the embers and the colors of a fire would mean different things. And also how you place a purple fire image on your mind, onto your third eye for healing purposes. Also, he spoke of crystal energized computers, of which were verified by familiar spirits in various parts of the universe through dowsing. He believed in prior lifetimes, so basically reincarnation over and over, and that he had been born and died, verified by pendulum. I believe it was 38 lifetimes over, many times over since creation till then. And he talked a lot of all these things. As well, he talked that all humans exist in another timeline, multiple timelines. And so a person could be married in one timeline happily, and then in another timeline, that same couple, things were falling apart basically. And he believed he was married to a person named Christina many times in prior lives. And she gave out revelations in classes he personally attended in this lifetime with her and where he lived. And his intent was to marry her in this lifetime as well. And she was very close to God, he said, getting revelations of instruction all the time that were not to be shared with just anyone. It was quite interesting that the psychic had told me that I had a Christina spirit guide. And now he's talking about this someone named Christina as well. Anyways, it was very confusing. He believed in other works like charging water with energy with his mind. Magician works was, sorcery, magician works was huge with him. Spells were huge with him. Undoing spells, creating spells. Chakra and Reiki works were big with him. 24-strand DNA Strand restoration to original DNA of humans was big with him. He said some of our original strands were missing, could be built up again in certain ways. He was big on using a 5-day or maybe a 7-day candle all the time, along with a St. Michael protection prayer. He said he was a master of Reiki and had master levels of other magician courses. I believe he took and graduated from. He was familiar with all things of the occult, pretty much, it seemed. Now when I look back on it, spells, chants, enchantments, downloads. He would talk about many downloads via meditation on his third eye. Be leery of anybody that's telling you they're receiving downloads from God. Downloads is a key word, a trigger to know that God doesn't do downloads. No, he does not. However, downloads are done in the occult through meditation to your third eye. He would do body twitches instead of pendulum dowsing. So there is things known as body dowsing. So he would do body twitch dowsing. Said that he would help my son. So he would do like body twitching, that, this, yes, no, whatever, right? Keeping me on the limb, right? Once the emotion code dowsing project was done on my end, then he discussed he felt he could train me to assist in various things of his responsibilities. And he felt I could work with him very reliably, he said. During all of this time, some strange things happened. He spoke about his birthday. He said he was born on April the 7th. So to me, this was pretty crazy. I had not told him my son's birthday, and my son was born on the same day, April the 7th. So I was shocked and told him that. His original comment that he could help my son was something he seemed to work at ongoing. For each meeting, he would do something, supposedly, to help my son. But the correlation of his knowledge was actually beyond a normal human, in this regard. For example, I had been running a device where you put a picture on the device and you can apply color therapy to the whole setup. I had been using a green light on the setup, so exposing the photo and the whole machine therapy to the green light as well, adding that color therapy. This was set up in my residence at the time. No one had ever seen the equipment running like that. He had never been to my place. He lived in another country. Nor did I reveal any of this to him. So during the time of this green light therapy I was applying in order to help my son, this was also remote equipment. So, the person doesn't have to live with you and can still receive a signal. And this is something, we grew up with our whole lives, basically, in my family, right? Like decades of stuff like this. During a meeting, he offers to connect to my son and put a protective hedge around him in his location he was staying at. So he proceeds in front of me in a Zoom meeting to work up energy, and he would hold up a large mug of water often, or I think orange juice sometimes, and he would energize it before doing any work with his mind. And he would focus on the cup, doing whatever mental work he was doing on the water, then drink the water up, and then sort of go in his own world to have his spirit leave his body and locate who he was looking for and do what he needed to do. So he advised during this process in one specific meeting like this that he located my son downtown and he could see him. And there were many other people around him, and it was a very unsafe area. I knew this would be true. So he cleared all bad spirits away from the area, from around my son, he said. He also proceeded to say he could take a look at his brain and see what was causing some problems. So he did his trance Reiki stuff, and he was trained in colors as well, in his own way. He said he could see an obvious green light around my son's head. Okay, this blew me away. Nowhere else, just on my son's head. At this point came the second aha moment to me, that there was something real going on here. The reason was I had not told him I had a green light running on my son's headshot photo. So this was not coincidental, people. This unclean spiritual realm, there is things that happen that are unexplainable. This could only have been the supernatural. There is no other way. I was convinced after that the man had powers, extra powers. He proceeded to tell me he saw my son's brain like a round soccer ball with a dent in it, like a piece had been deflated, a small piece. And this was the area that needed repair, he said, for his health to return. Seeing as how no doctor here had ever been able to help me with any medical conditions my son experienced, ongoing seeing and experiencing things in the supernatural world, this made complete sense to me that this man was the one that could finally see what was going wrong and could fix it. The man, after locating the deflated portion, lighted up in green, advised he was able to do some repair of this. And he presented like it was all good now and things would improve. Kind of like I did my part. The what you said you would like done part, right? Part of the agreement. And which I came out of agreement with as well on behalf of my son. He's covered with the blood of Jesus and so on now, people. So don't worry. And he has been fire baptized with Holy Spirit. So, but please continue praying for my son, okay? And so since my son didn't live with me, I would have to wait for him to contact me at various times to see if there was any improvement. So now in continuing online meetings with this man I told you about, Brazil man, he was big on me locating through dowsing unforgivenesses. That was huge for him. That still existed. So if someone wronged someone else and there was never a forgiveness done, and so he explained his emotion code therapy program would resolve these things. The goal was to locate via dowsing who the unforgiveness was from. Is there an unforgiveness for Steve, I'll say. And if it comes back as yes, the pendulum, then was it an unforgiveness from Steve's mother, father, brother, family member, or what? So once I've got an answer from pendulum from that, it went to, okay, what year was the unforgiveness in? And I could spell out the year. So Brazil man had an incantation that would be used, which was a series of words said as a magic spell or charm to remove the stuck unforgiveness from that person after it was located. This is what others were already practicing in Brazil with his program, he said, with apparently good results. At this time, I began expanding the online business services more because I could douse. Brazil man would sort of push for more help with things that I could do that he said he couldn't do. For example, he said he could not douse with a pendulum. He said he tried Akashic Records, but never really was able to master that. So I took a Akashic Record reading course because this involved the Hall of Records for humans, and for every event or unforgiveness, etc., for every human that exists or existed, things are stored in the Hall of Records in the heavens is the premise of this whole thing. So he was very interested in locating the unforgiveness of a person in the Hall of Records as well, in doing Akashic Records. Then applying the incantations he had with very specific steps to break off spells, hexes, voodoo, magic, and generational curses, or curses that he had been trained up on in his wizardry skills. So the process was douse and then find the unforgiveness, break the unforgiveness with the incantation, then go to the Akashic Hall of Records and clear the forgiveness from the heavens, the hall, and this would somehow free a soul of a person and help them. So, of course, this began with the clearing of anything I could find for himself and his past lives via dowsing. This expanded to other people afterwards involved with his emotion program. So I would douse what I learned with the Akashic part intertwined. So, for example, I would start by dowsing to the front door of the Akashic Hall. There's a guard that would be at the door. It would have to be stated who was entering, so announce yourself. And one would need to have that guard accompany you next to go find the record, to pull the record you sought by stating the person's name you wanted or some details of the person. And when the record was pulled that you wanted, you state what you wanted, then you ask for a certain date and a year or an event to be cleared from the records, which was an unforgiveness. Eventually, this process of forgiveness in the hall records led to Brazil man asking my thoughts about forgiving Satan. And would I be willing to forgive Satan? And would I be willing to douse and locate Satan's unforgivenesses? Locate them all, and then go to the Akashic Hall and clear his records as well. This was a big project, and I do not recall how many unforgivenesses there was that showed up, but it was many, located throughout many years via the dowsing. So at this point with the data, the time, it was ready to go to the hall and ask for clearance of these things, because it was said to me that someone needed to forgive Satan, saying that he needed to be forgiven. It seemed to him that there was no one else to do this job. Me, not having any Bible experience, not understanding that, Satan's not a person. This is an unclean spirit, and zero discernment from, just not knowing anything. This was basically my thinking that God exists in the universe. God created everything. And at the time, I recall thinking that unforgiveness, to have something unforgiven, was a bad thing. And that no one should be left with any unforgiveness. And that was what was in my mind. And at the time, my thinking included Satan as well. When the man was talking about it, when Brazil man was talking about it. So I said yes. I felt his unforgiveness should be cleared up as well. And I agreed to this project to do this as well in the Akashic Hall of Records for Satan and clear his unforgivenesses as well. And any agreements in regards to all these things, right? I break and bind them and leave them with Jesus and take them away in Jesus' name. Amen. Next, Brazil man proceeded to prearrange a meeting with another lady from Brazil that he knew. It was a friend of his mother's, to add protection to this mission, as he called it. He called it missions, because it would apparently be something others would try to interfere with. Others being, I have no idea who he meant. So he introduced me to this lady because he said to clear Satan's records in the hall, extra protection and guards needed to be placed at certain points, basically, I think I recall, and would need to be around while doing this process. So we all met online in Zoom, and Brazil man and me went to the Akashic Hall of Records, cleared out all of Satan's records and unforgivenesses that were located from the dowsing data. After that meeting ended, that same evening I was having a bath. And while having a bath, I heard for the second time in my life that loud voice that I was positive was God. He spoke loud and clear, and it was a male voice, the same one I am sure I heard some 12 years before. And it was just a very loud, matter-of-fact, thank you. And I was not thinking at all and just instantly spoke out loud and said, "You're welcome." Back to the voice. It hit me after that. It felt to me like God was directly saying, "Thank you for forgiving Satan." It seemed like that. And the record clearing. I just accepted that thought that God was pleased about that. And I moved on deeper into the spiritual realm of things. I don't understand the thank you, people. I don't understand it. I can't even process it to this day. I don't know what the thank you was about. All I can tell you is I heard the voice, and it was the same voice I heard 12 years before. And I can tell you that I know God uses both good and evil for the purpose of his will. So I don't know what his will was there. I don't know what was going on. Back on to the testimony. So in around this same time frame, just after, Brazil man advised separately that his mom's friend, the lady, needed help as well. He explained she lived on a portal. She lived in a home on a hilltop that was a major portal, he said. And this was a demonic portal, he said, for things coming and going, apparently that her home sat on. She was not feeling well. Her family and pets as well were affected by unclean spirits. But she would liaise with Brazil man on prior occasions for shuttles of ships, he said, to the universe or center of Mother Earth, I believe it was, for rescue missions of things. There was a huge barrage of incantations and things of the spirits going on constantly at this time. And missions he would arrange with her and ask me for dowsing assistance now on these missions. So, for example, when they got to a place spiritually, and he let me know when he spiritually was elevated, for example, to another universe, and then I was to douse and locate which level of which universe the stolen souls from humans on Earth were being stored in. He would rescue them and they would bring them back. It was very Star Wars-ish now, actually, when I think about it. He would also talk about a couple of other men he worked with, recruited to help him keep watch over the universe. And he would train these people, but they were not very reliable, he said, and they would get a big head and start thinking they could do projects in the universe without his permission, expanding their own energy power with his teachings to be more powerful on their own. And he could actually know and locate how much they were increasing themselves in their power without permission. He didn't like that part, that they would do this without his permission, and said he would have to fire them, decommission them actually, unpower them, because they could not follow his authority and wanted to be bigger than him, or get excited about taking on projects in the universe that they would get wind of, and then they got all excited about a new mission. They would go recruit Brazil man, and they would need to do this next mission together. Brazil man, however, wanted to be the one in charge of deciding what mission got done, and even if it was taken on. So it caused clashes, apparently, with people, in prior people. He was seeking another person he could rely on for missions and watching the universe, and would indicate, I may be trainable for this as well. By now I was hooked into being recruited to work on a job for God that he said, Michael said, it would be okay to approach me. He was able to supernaturally confirm the green light with never having any way, shape, or form to be able to even know about this green light. So he had insight, spiritual insight. There was definitely spiritual insight going on there into things. And for me, I had been dowsing and communicating with God. Remember, I told you I would douse to God and ask him questions prior to this. So to me, this was all very, very real at the time. Much focus was put on stolen souls, locating stolen souls. That was the premise for people with mental health problems, was that they had their soul was stolen and stored somewhere else. Some of them, some people who were just not themselves, or had completely changed personalities, for example. So the plan was to rescue these people from various universes where they were being stored and their different dimensions that each universe held, and rescuing them, then transporting them back to Earth, including my son's soul. My son's soul. So he felt my son's soul was out there somewhere as well. He finally located and brought back all these things to Earth, and he had incantations created that he would say to have Archangel Michael do or say to Michael. He was always doing his body twitches, talking to Archangel Michael, or something like that. In order for these things to be fixed in stages, he was doing his body twitching and talking with Michael and doing his incantations all the time.